Hello everyone, in this video I'm just gonna explain how you can just write the same application which you are seeing on my screen in just 5 minutes by writing a 9 lines of code. This is a best agentic AI which can interact with the Postgres database where we have a stock related information. So this is what my database looks like, where we have a bunch of tables and we can simply ask a plain language like what all information we want to extract from the database. So what are the top 10 stocks by volume today? So this is what the response we are getting. To write this, let's get into the demo part and see how we can do that. The very first thing which you need these 4 libraries. One is langchain-community, langchain Google Gemini, because I'm using a Gemini model 2.5 flash. And then we have this PSCOP binary for interacting with the database. And then we have this Gradio to build the UI, which you are seeing on the screen. So without further delay, let's get into the coding part and see how we can do that. The very first thing which you have to do to install all these libraries, right? The second thing is the very first, we have to just run these 6 lines of code. Let me quickly walk you through with these lines of code, what it is doing. So the very first thing we are doing, we are just importing, this chat Google generative AI from this LangChain Google Gemini, then this create SQL agent, which is actually the heart of our agent, which is going to give this power to reasoning, act, observe, and just see whether, your query is answered correctly or not. And then in LangChain community itself, the utility, then we have this SQL database, which is actually allow us to make the connection to any SQL database. But here we have to create this connection string where it's running on my local on 5432 with the help of a Docker. And this is what the connection string is. And whatever the database you have, you can just create the accordingly same connections. Next thing is the chat Google generative AI, where we are going to make a large language model object, which is going to interact with this model, which is Gemini 2.5 flash. Temperature is 0.1 so that it can provide us a accurate result. If you increase that, then hallucination can increase accordingly. Right. And if for to have this working, you have to set the Google API underscore key all in a uppercase. This is what you have to set as an environmental variable, which I have already done. So whenever you run this, it is all going to automatically fetch from the environment. And now the next part and the last piece of this entire code base is create SQL agent, which requires your large language object, which we have already created. Then it requires a DB, which DB you want to connect. Then this is verbose true. There are a lot of other features which we can talk about in future video. This will give you the minimal information for creating your agent object. Then it is having a method called invoke, which requires an input JSON. And input JSON, you have to give an input, which is the tag. And then you have to give your actual query, what you want. What I want what are the top 10 stocks by the volume today? This is what I want, right? So this is 6 lines of code. We can quickly run this. Right. So when it is running, what we need now, we have to add a UI so that, our application would look like this, right? So for that, we're going to use a Gradio. Gradio is the simplest library which provide us to just create any UI what we want, right? So here, what we need, the very first thing which we need is we have to just import a Gradio as GR, which is the standard. Then we have this interface class, which required bunch of parameter. The very first thing is required a function. So we need this function QueryDB. We can name it anything. And then we need an input variable and the output variable. Input variable is a string. Output variable is also a string. And that is where we have to give inputs and outputs. Here we are saying this is GR text box. We need a text box created, and whatever the information, so lines 2 means there are 2 lines which you can see over here. Right? We have this first line and the second line, right? So this is just setting a breadth of the text box. Then we have this placeholder output, how many output we're gonna get from this function. Then title, description, example. Just these are the minimal thing which we need. So once we create this interface object, we can just quickly launch this, and now we will be having this application up and running. And this is where we don't need this anymore, because now we are just calling this inside this function return create agent, whatever I was printing out, and now we can directly just execute from this function. Okay, so let's come back here and quickly try to understand what it does, right? So when we run this from the command line, the very first thing this agent does is it's try to call this tool SQLDB list table. First is try to extract all the tables which we have in a DB. And this is what we have in a DB, which I just explained you in the beginning. Then the next action, what it takes is try to extract the DB schema. So it's trying to extract, which table is required based on your query and what is the structure of that. And that is where it extracted the structure. right? And then it's try to run that and try to see what kind of data it is having, and it's keep doing. So now we can see the another action where it is checking that query. So whatever the query it has created, is try to run that and see whether this is actually going to give us the value. So it is trying some different permutation and combination for those queries and try to establish whether the correct query is, responding to the query which user has asked, and it's keep doing that and keep running for like again it is trying to check with the query, and finally it get to the point where it is able to extract all the 10 stock by volume for given day, which is 29th of August today. And now we can see this. The next thing is what we can do is we can quickly run this application one more time, and this time we will have our UI up and running, and by default Gradio run this on 7860. Okay, so now we got this up and running. As I mentioned, it run in 7860, right? So let me just quickly convert that into the dark mode. Let me switch that. And now we can quickly ask the same question, and now it is going to do this. So boom, now we have this UI up and running. Just quickly see how many lines of code we have written. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 lines of code, and we are able to have our agentic AI, which can interact our database with the plain English text. That is what I wanted to cover in this video. If you really like this video, give a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed for my channel, please subscribe for my channel as well. Right now we can see the response on the screen itself, right? So you can see that. Okay. So now you can just ask any question, whatever you want, and it will just go to your database, try to get the data what you are looking for. And your query has to, you don't need to worry about what kind of database structure is there, but there are a few things which you have to keep in mind. That's it from my side for this particular video. If you have any comment, any feedback, please feel free to put that into the comment section. And if you haven't subscribed for my channel, please subscribe for my channel and give a thumbs up and hit a notification bell. So whenever there will be a new video, you will get notified accordingly. So as always, thanks for watching this. Stay healthy and keep learning new things.